Welcome back to Drunk on Writing and the 9th episode of the Stephen King series of Dissections. Or should I say, the 2nd episode of the Richard Bachman series of Dissections. Because today, we're talking about The Long Walk. A book I never really heard of before this year, but which has quickly and quietly gone on to become my favorite Stephen King book yet. Yeah, you heard that right. Before we dive into The Long Walk, let me just remind you, if you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel or head on over to patreon.com/drunkonwriting, where just $1 gets you early access to every single video I publish, and a bit more gets you a whole lot more goodies. So let's just jump right into The Long Walk, shall we? You might be surprised to know that The Long Walk, despite being Stephen King's 7th publication, was actually the first book he ever started writing. Yes, he started writing it when he was back at the University of Maine. This is about 1966 or so. And do you know what else happened to be going on in 1966? Something that we've been talking about the last couple episodes of the Stephen King Dissection series? That's right, the Vietnam War, which despite never, not even once, being name-dropped in The Long Walk, has everything to do with this book. Well, maybe I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. Let's jump back a little bit and start at the beginning. As it says right there on the cover, The Long Walk is a novel of chilling, macabre possibility in a future America where the marathon is the ultimate sports competition. Which is true, given, according to the book, over $2 million gets bet on The Long Walk each and every year that it's held, which is annually. So what is The Long Walk? Well, basically, 100 boys, I guess you could say 200 boys if you include all the backups, line up at this place in Maine. They start in Maine, and they just start walking down the road. They get no breaks. They can't drop below 4 miles an hour when they're walking, which is, surprisingly fast if you ever try to walk 4 miles an hour, as I did a little earlier. And I'm still a little tired, still a little sweaty. But they don't get any breaks. They only get what they can carry with them. They only get a once per day restock of food, but they do get all the water that they can drink. Although they can't stop and pee. They just have to, kind of go as they're going, or, risk a chance and drop trow right there in the middle of the road. There are no porta potties following these guys around. Why would anybody sign up for this? Well, that's kind of a big part of the story. We don't ever really find out the boys' motivations to sign up for this, other than the fact that there's some sort of magical prize at the end, like this pot of gold at the end of this rainbow, this Long Walk rainbow. Whether it's, all of your wishes fulfilled, all the money that you want, the dream car, the dream house, maybe some medical benefits paid, maybe your student loans paid off. Whatever it is you want, at the end of The Long Walk, you supposedly get it. So they say. This why, though, this is something that's never really concretely answered at all throughout the book. In fact, just when I was really starting to wonder, as stuff started to progress and things started to get a little dark, and I was asking myself, why would anybody want to do this? Stephen King goes in there and he drops a little bit of knowledge. He gives a little bit of a clue. He says, the whole walk seemed nothing but one looming question mark. Garrity told himself that a thing like this must have some deep meaning. Surely it was so. A thing like this must provide an answer to every question. But it doesn't. As I, the reader, is coming up with these questions in my head, Stephen King doesn't answer them. The book doesn't answer them. None of the characters in the book answer them. They talk as naturally as you would expect, but there aren't any answers. Probably because there aren't really any simple, cut and dry answers to such a profound kind of question. Why would anybody sign up for this long walk? 100 boys out there just walking down the road? Well, you can look at it and say, well, why would anybody sign up to go to war? Why would anybody go to this foreign country, this whole other country, as Forrest Gump puts it in Forrest Gump, and go fight for something that you don't even understand? Most importantly, why would a government condone that? In this book, why would a government condone this competition where 100 young boys enter and only one walks away? Because yes, that's right. The Long Walk isn't just a little friendly competition to see who can last the longest. Every single boy who drops out of it gets shot, gets killed. They die. There's only one survivor out of the entire 100. And, if you know anything about sort of a PTSD experience, that's not much of a surviving anyway. And as our main character, Garrity there, as he's thinking about that, he kind of explains that even for that winner at the end of the road, no doctor in the world could revive you with a transfusion of 20s or 50s. Is it really worth it? Surely there has got to be a better way than entering some stupid competition where you walk down the road with a bunch of other boys only to get shot if you trip, or get shot if you get a Charlie horse, or get shot if you happen to get some diarrhea or something. I mean, you're walking 100 miles, maybe you're gonna poop yourself. I don't know. I've never done it. Again, we don't get any answers out of this book. But what's so poignant about The Long Walk is that the finality of this competition is communicated to us right from the get-go. We understand almost immediately that there will be one winner, that 99 of the boys introduced in this book will die. There's that thought as a reader is like, oh, something's gonna change. There's gonna be a revolution. More than one boy will live. They will find a loophole. There will be something where they'll team up and they'll gang up and they'll fight back. Somebody will save them. But no, this isn't the Hunger Games. This isn't Battle Royale. This is The Long Walk. And that doesn't happen. In fact, our expectations are a bit subverted in a couple of key scenes where, maybe some kid does try to start a revolution. Some kid does try to take back control. And the rest of them look at that kid and say, well, what are you doing? No, we're in this competition. We have to walk to get to the end. Because they're defeated. They're so enraptured by that final goal, that pot at the end of the rainbow, that they can't even think about anything else. I keep saying that one will live at the end. But there are hints throughout the book that maybe even that one at the end doesn't really live. There's at least one kid in the book who says he saw a previous winner. The previous winner was not in good shape, got kind of swarmed by the spectators, and we don't know if that kid had a happy ending or not. How do you have a happy ending when, after walking with a group of kids your same age, all of whom have just died in front of your eyes, and your feet are just bloody piles of torn flesh? How is that a happy ending? These boys, these men, these kids, even if they win, they don't really win. They don't ever really go home again after an experience like this. So I think it's safe to say you could see how this would be an allegory for the Vietnam War. And King does even more than all that to build the similarities, to drive home these similarities with the ongoing conflict. The conflict that was ongoing at the time, of course, it's history to us right now. It's in the way he builds the camaraderie. It's in the way the kids remind each other time and time again, just like Lieutenant Dan did, again, back in Forrest Gump, to take care of your feet. The way King evokes that comforting feeling of being huddled together in the dark, in the cold, in the ever-changing weather, and being close enough to feel that kind of humanity from another person as you're in this strange foreign environment, in this strange foreign concept of a conflict that you really don't truly understand, but you've thrown yourself wholeheartedly into. It's in the way he keeps making you as a reader, hope that these kids are going to team up to find a way to break the rules, to overcome their obstacles and make it home alive. And horribly, it's in the way that the characters deal with death, the way they deal with the entire conflict. Collectively, they go through the whole range of emotions, from isolation, because it doesn't matter if you pass the time of day with someone or not. In the end, you're alone. To desperate fear, it's a fake, McReese said, his voice trembling. There's no winner, no prize. They take the last guy out behind a barn somewhere and shoot him too. To questioning God. Why'd I have to get sick? I was going good. I really was. Odds-on favorite. Even when I'm tired, I like to walk. Look at folks, smell the air. Why? Is it God? Did God do this to me? To simply wanting to do nothing more than live and love again. I love you, Jan, he thought. He wasn't dumb, and he knew she had become more to him than she actually was. She had turned into a life symbol, a shield against the sudden death that came from the half-track. To sheer defensive ferocity, he won't last much longer, a woman in the front row said quite audibly. Your tits won't last much longer, Garrity snapped to her, and the crowd cheered him. And back to loneliness. Garrity felt a sticky dryness in his throat. The thing was, he wanted to be touched. Queer, not queer, that didn't seem to matter now that they were all busy dying. But I think the thing that's handled the best is not just the conflict, but the actual deaths themselves. Some of them are far more important than others. When we see a character that we've known, that we've seen talk with the main character, when we see that character go, when we see that character shot or just drop dead on the side of the road, that's an important one. Important one to the story, important one to the conflict. But then there are other deaths. Again, there are 100 boys in this thing. So some of them they're just dead. We don't even know their names. They just die. Or maybe, it's just a passing thought. It's like, oh, that kid's dead now. They're basically a statistic at that point. And I think because of that, because of the way death is handled, because we have these ones that are very poignant and very thought-provoking, very emotional, and we have these other ones just like, oh, that happened. This book, which was written, obviously, as a kind of commentary on Vietnam, really also works as a microcosm on life itself. It's about people coming together, banding together in the face of some obstacle, working for the betterment of each other, but still kind of focusing on their own individual betterment. Reaching that end goal, reaching for the thing that will push them to the next level. And as noted throughout this book, in the end, despite how much they grow to love each other, despite how much they depend on each other to keep each other going, in the end, there's only one winner, there's only one survivor, and if you don't make it, you die alone. That sort of knowledge, it's cynical. It's cynical as all hell. But again, you can see how this would be written by, an 18-year-old Stephen King in his dorm as the Vietnam conflict is going on. People his age are out there dying for why? For what reason, really, in the end? How is this going to benefit us? How is this going to benefit Stephen King and the people here in Maine, where he was at the time? As King wrote in this book, it hurts in the worst rupturing way, knowing there would be no more you, but the universe would roll on just the same, unharmed and unhampered. I really don't know how else you would think, how else you would write in the face of what seems to be an unending war where everyone that is probably getting sucked up and killed or coming back utterly destroyed. I really wish this book didn't hold up as well as it does. There hasn't been an adaptation of The Long Walk yet. So why did I stick an adaptation section in here? Well, because there is an adaptation coming, supposedly, and because, there's an actual Long Walk. Yeah, like a real-life adaptation of this book. Let's tackle these one at a time, shall we? Frank Darabont, who you might remember did that short film based on Night Shift's The Woman in the Room, but, he'd also go on to direct The Shawshank Redemption, The Green Mile, and The Mist, all of which we'll talk about another time. He held the film rights for The Long Walk for years, but I guess he was just never really able to get it off the ground. But I guess sometime recently, the rights lapsed and somebody else picked it up. So just this past April, New Line Cinema announced that they're going to be adapting this film. And they're going to be working with James Vanderbilt to bring it to the big screen. No, not the guy from Dawson's Creek. Vanderbilt has apparently produced a number of films, directed 2015's Truth, which I never saw, I've never even heard of it before this, but he also has writing credits for The Amazing Spider-Man and its sequel, and Independence Day Resurgence. So, yeah, we'll see how that goes, if it ever actually does. But there's that other adaptation that I mentioned, which is something of a new thing for me, a real-life adaptation. Now, this isn't, this isn't like LARPing. This isn't people dressing up and reenacting anything. This is a real-life competition. It's called Marathon March, also formerly Thought Rally. And it was directly inspired by King's novel and takes its name from an alternate title for the book. It's an annual event that started back in 2009 when only 2 people signed up and walked. But this year, in 2018, 248 people signed up. Sadly, no one from the US was there to compete. We're a driving culture, I guess. But there was someone from Canada who I got to root on as I watched the event live. Go North America! We don't have somebody in the World Cup, so we root for Marathon March. Sadly, she bowed out at the 9 hours and 33-minute mark, which is still insane, but only 162nd place. This year's winner was Richard Anderson, and he, along with the runner-up, walked 87 hours and 48 minutes. Anderson also won last year's competition, but only walked then 81 hours. So, guy stepped up his game a little bit. Now, I know what you're thinking, but this real-life marathon march is not nearly as cruel as the story. Nobody is getting shot. Nobody is dying. People are walking of their own free will, their own volition, something of an endurance thing. The same reason people do Tough Mudder or some other of those marathons. But, again, you have to keep up the pace. You do get a break about every 6 hours. You can get a bit of a replenishment. And there's a porta potty. And you can stop and, use it. You still have to be moving. But you get a certain amount of time per hour to use it. You can also, again, stop on the side of the road and go if you want. That is in the rules. I was thinking about signing up when I learned about this, when I was, researching for this dissection. But sadly, the 2018 one was already full. It was just a couple weeks ago as of recording this, so, timing just didn't work out. And that's what I'm going to put it as. It's not the fact that I didn't want to walk for 87 hours straight. Who am I kidding? Let's have some wine, shall we? Now, for the long walk, I specifically went to this wine. The Last Wine Company's Walking Dead Blood Red Blend. If you ignore the dead zombie part of it, the blood and the guts and everything, the long walk is surprisingly similar to The Walking Dead. You could kind of see the similarities there, right? But I'll go you one further. The Walking Dead, the phrase The Walking Dead, is actually used by Stephen King in this book. Twice. Abraham, how did you get into a balls up like this? Asked McBreeze. Bragged my way in, Abraham said promptly. He started to go on, and then the guns interrupted him. There was the familiar mail stack thud. That was gallant, Baker said, looking back. He's been Walking Dead all day. Bragged his way in, Garrity mused, and then laughed. And then, just a few chapters later, of the other 10, 5 seemed to have drawn into that special netherworld that Olsen had discovered. One step beyond pain and the comprehension of what was coming to them. They walked through the rainy dark like gaunt ghosts, and Garrity didn't like to look at them. They were the Walking Dead. This friggin' book, man, it is a rough one. But this wine, not so much. You can see it right from the color, which is not quite a blood red so much as it is a bit of a violet, a bit of a, like a light purple, which is going to give you a hint as to the flavors that are going to hit you as soon as you start drinking this. Is the cranberries, the raspberries, even some cherries in there. There's also some hints of some chocolate, maybe some vanilla from that oak barreling. There's a long finish, and you can see the legs on this sucker. It is just a beautiful, beautiful, well-made wine. I am very happy that I have this glass, and I'm very happy that I have this bottle, and I'm going to drink every single last drop of it and probably replenish it at some point because this is very good. But, why don't I go ahead and wrap up this dissection so you just don't have to sit here and hear me drone on about some wine. I've read a number of books throughout the years about war, the effects of war, the causes of war, the costs of war. I even did a dissection on one, The Monuments Men, last year. Not a lot of you watched it, so I understand if you don't know what I'm talking about. It was a great book. Well, you know, a lot of them are. But very few of them actually hit me, you know? A lot of them are very kind of removed from the humanitarian side of war. They're cold in a way. And even when they're not, I can kind of remove myself from the situation and look at it as if I were a bystander to history. But with The Long Walk, King really, well, you know, he put me in the character's shoes. The shoes that aren't even there at the end of the book. They're, you know, shredded and left by the wayside miles back. And it really shined a different sort of light on the Vietnam War, one that I haven't ever gotten from another piece. It made me really feel kind of the human element of that war. And I have uncles who are veterans of that war, and I've never gotten something like this. Which is astonishing given that the book isn't even placed there. It really technically has absolutely nothing to do with the war. But that's the great thing about writing. That's the great thing about fiction, about science fiction, about anything like this, where you can take the modern day and convey it through a sort of timeless story that could be told at any single point and reflect what is happening and give commentary on it. And I hope if we do ever see a true adaptation of this book, it is just as powerful as the book is. Now, I will say, I don't think a modern day adaptation of this should reflect what is happening or what happened in the Vietnam War back then. It should reflect today. There's a lot of shit going on today, pardon my language, that could be reflected in a movie like this, where we send our boys to die, when we send our children to go die. There's a lot in the news right now about children, but, you know, for this dissection, I am not going to go there. Although I can't say the same about the next dissection, The Dead Zone, because I think if you've read that book, if you've seen that movie, we are going to be going there. Oh, look forward to that one. So that will be next time. Until then, if you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe to the Drunk on Writing YouTube page. Please be sure to go over to patreon.com/drunkonwriting and sign up. And, just until next time, cheers and keep on writing.